So, two Jonathan Demme movies on deck. Something Wild. What's that? 1986 or something like
86, I
that.
think. Yeah,
86
should
and
be
Melvin
86.
and Howard, 1980, I think.
80, yeah.
I've seen both of them. I haven't seen Melvin. I rented Melvin and Howard on video in the 90s, probably. So I haven't seen it since then. Probably on your recommendation. And Kale liked that movie a lot too, didn't she?
Yeah, she liked it a lot. Yeah, so did John Simon. Like he
Okay.
was over the moon for it, and that was kind
Wow.
of unusual. Actually, he was a big Jonathan Demme fan.
Really?
Starting with Handle with Care or Citizens Band, and then Melvin and Howard, and I don't know how far it extended after that, but he would compare those two films to Renoir, I think.
Wow.
Kale too, yeah.
And that's Paul Lamont, right? Who is in
Yeah, from American
American
Graffiti,
Graffiti,
John
and
Milner,
what was the other? Wasn't he in
and
another movie that you
Aloha Bobby Rose
yeah.
was talked about. Yeah,
So three.
so
Wow.
great. Then he ended up in just junky horror films, and I mean, he probably did some stuff that I missed, but I think he could have gone on to actual, first billing and stardom, and he never did for some reason.
Hmm. Okay. So which one you want to discuss
Um,
first? So
I,
we can
I
do.
well, I think I can finish with Melvin Howard very quickly because honestly, I think I goofed Scott by putting that in the book. I went back and I watched the Creedence Clearwater scene. It's good. I mean, it's really good for a few seconds. He uses "Fortunate Son."
Mhm.
It's right after the film has a pretty famous opening sequence where Lamont picks up Howard Hughes late at night. He doesn't know it's Howard Hughes,
Right.
and they talk for about 10, 15 minutes, I think. And Paul Lamont sings him his song that he's wrote, Santa's Got a Souped Up Sleigh.
Hmm.
And and he doesn't know who he's talking to. And it is it's the scene in the film, I think, that's the most famous scene. And finally, and he picks him up because Hughes is out in the middle of the desert. He's crawling along the road. We don't really know why. And then he says, "You can drop me off here," and he drops him, I think, pretty much in front of the Hughes Hotel. Um, and he doesn't know who he's just spent most of the night talking to. And then it immediately goes into Fortunate Son. So we hear the great opening of that. And you cut to Melvin's everyday life. He lives in a trailer park, and it's got a couple of great long shots of the desert, and his car rolling up to his trailer house. And you get to hear the song loud for about 30 seconds and then softer for about 20 seconds, and then it's gone. Um, I don't think it's has enough of an impact to justify being in the book. I think I remembered it as more prominent than it was. I think instead I should have chosen Jonathan Demme makes great use of Bizarre Love Triangle and Married to the Mob, which is a film I love, which
Hmm.
is a film he made after Something Wild. I think he uses like a lot of it, 4 or 5 minutes in this end credit sequence, which has it reprises some of the characters. We get the actors' names, but it includes things that weren't in the film. And Bizarre Love Triangle keeps playing, and I think that probably
Wow.
would have been a better choice. But it was good to get Creedence Clearwater in the book.
So are we saying that anyone who bought this book can get their money back because
Absolutely,
you've
absolutely.
recanted on one of your choices, or
There'll be a newer version with Melvin Howard gets the boot, Marriott.
yeah.
Mary.
Actually, that's the point. On eBay, this will be worth
By the way,
thousands.
next time I see you, I do have the expanded version for you.
Okay, great.
5 copies of it.
Wow. Okay.
Um, I was going to say that I think in Creedence Clearwater and movies, and I watched that Creedence Clearwater documentary, by the way.
I
Did you
watched that,
watch
by
it?
the way. I
So
watched it.
we'll
Yeah.
have to talk about that at some point. I was thinking the most famous use of Creedence, and this is why Jeff Bridges narrated the documentary, is in The Big Lebowski.
Hmm.
I think, is it Looking Out My Back Door, maybe that's used? I can't remember. But that would be the most famous Creedence in the movies. I couldn't even find Melvin and Howard on either Tune Find or What Song. They didn't have a listing for it.
Hmm.
So it's good, but I don't think it's good as I thought it was. There's a couple of other interesting uses of music in Melvin and Howard. They use Satisfaction when he catches up to his wife or ex-wife at that point, working in a strip club, Mary Steenburgen. She's really funny because she's just she's like a cheerleader, all smiles and effervescent, put in this strip club setting, and she's just totally ill-suited, but she's trying to dance and strip to satisfaction. She's doing all these sort of geeky moves.
Mm.
That's pretty good. And the other thing is, Melvin is a songwriter. You've got his Souped Up Santa song, but even better, when he's working as a milkman, he plays at the company party, and I think he's doing 6 days on the road, but he changes the words so that he's singing about all the people he works with and the people he works
Okay.
for. They're all drunk and they're all loving it. That's good. And Paul Matt's doing his own singing, obviously.
Okay. Speaking of CCR in the movies, isn't Up
Yes.
Around the Bend in that one other movie you chose? You didn't choose that song as your song.
Oh,
The
of
movie,
course. Cool water. It's
yeah.
the campfire scene. You're right. That's the greatest use of CCR in a movie. The Big Lebowski is the most famous, but that's the greatest use.
Okay, and I've never seen The Big Lebowski, believe it or not. So,
Oh, okay. It's. I've been meaning to go. It's become one of those films that the cult. It's got a cult that can be annoying. And it's now the film that Jeff Bridges, I think, is most known for, even though he's such a good actor. And the Coen brothers have done better films, but it's worth seeing.
yeah. Okay.
So yeah, I think that's all I wanted to say. Melvin Howard itself is an excellent film. Don't get me wrong. It is really one of the best American films of the '80s, I would say. Probably should have won. I mean, it's definitely better than, if it's the same year as Ordinary People, it's definitely better than Ordinary. That was a year that had Ordinary People, which I don't care for. It had Coal Miner's Daughter, Melvin Howard, and Raging Bull.
Raging Bull, yeah.
So I think the best picture nominees that year were actually pretty strong, but Melvin Howard would have been a better choice.
Yeah.
So we can move into Something Wild, which you and I saw, I think, probably the summer before the book came out, because I wanted to see it again. It was playing at I think we saw it at the Bloomer.
Yeah.
And I just watched it again over the weekend, and I think I liked it even better than that time. It's just a really good film.
Yeah. And the use of Wild Thing, of course. Well,
yeah,
there's few uses, right?
Well, it's used 4 times, and I noticed this time Chip Taylor gets a thank you in the credits. I'm pretty Chip Taylor's the guy that wrote it, right?
I think so, yeah.
I don't know if he was a Trog or not. He may not even been a Trog.
I associated him as being one, but I could be wrong. Maybe I'll look that up.
The leader of the Trogs, it wasn't Chip Taylor. It was somebody else who I just can't think of his name. But yeah, and I'm thinking they probably thanked him because, they said, look, we're going to really mess around with your song and do 3 different versions, and we'll throw in the Trogs too.
Here's a quick Chip Taylor thing.
Yep.
I'll just tell you. You're
Okay.
right. He's not in the
I didn't think so. He's the
Trogs. But guess what other song he wrote?
What? Angel of the Morning.
I
knew that. I knew that. He could even be a Nashville guy. So the first time it's used, and it's not really Wild Thing, but David Byrne incorporates the words Wild Thing into the song. He does over the opening. I don't think it's really at all recognizable as Wild Thing. Maybe when he actually sings the word Wild Thing, he sings them in the same key as the Trogs do. The second time it's used is the second time, now I'm trying to remember which comes first. I think the second time it's used is the one I used for the book, which is the Trogs, and it's great. It's short, but it's memorable. I don't know if you remember, they had just built the restaurant. It was like the first really outside of the law thing he had done. They were in the restaurant, and Melanie Griffith says to Jeff Daniels, she says, I'll get this one. She goes up, she's at the cash, she thinks she's paying for it, but she's actually saying to them, he's got it. And she's taken his wallet. So she goes out, gets the card, rolls up to the window, and the waitress comes up. She says, the lady said that you would pay. He's got no wallet, nothing. He's waiting out there in the car, just staring. I'm like, what are you going to do? He goes up to the cash. He finds out at the cash that he's expected to pay. Suddenly the manager's there. Out from behind the kitchen, the chef comes, and the chef is played by Charles Napier, who's this famous guy from Russ Meyer films and lots of B films. And he's surrounded, and he doesn't know what to do, and he makes a dash for it. And he jumps in the car, and they're laughing, and he says, oh, that felt great. And then Wild Thing, and then they're driving along, and Wild Thing comes on the Trogs, and there's this great overhead shot of the car. And the thing that makes it so memorable is Jonathan Demme times the movement of the car to the song. They're going fairly slowly, and then it gets to the part in the song which is kind of a pause in the chorus, well,
Right.
I think I love you.
Yeah.
And then when the music comes roaring back, that's when the car speeds out of frame. It's great.
Mm.
And it's another instance of something we talked about many times, a song that I just thought was dead for me, that suddenly in the context of that film, it's really exciting again. The third time is where they pick up a hitchhiking family, and then they're just in the car, and they're all singing it. And Jeff Daniels is slouched in the back seat. And one guy, the grandfather's playing the guitar. It's totally absurd.
Wow.
And then the last time is Sister Carol. Oh, and that works really well over the end credits.
Right, the reggae version.
Yeah, and it is kind of Wild Thing, I think, a lot closer than the David Byrne at the beginning. And I like the way they do it. She's on the, from our perspective, the left-hand side of the frame. The credits roll on the right, and it's pretty great.
Okay.
So yeah, they really get a lot of use out of it. And the other musical stuff I like in that film, here I jotted down a couple things. Well, there's the Feelies at the prom, which is funny.
Yeah.
Do you remember they play Fame?
Yeah, yeah.
What's the other
great.
70s song they do? They do a Feelies song, they do Fame, and they do another really well-known song. I'm thinking of Fast Times at Night. They do Life. That's Fast Times where they do the band as Life in the Fast Lane. I can't remember the others.
It's not a disco song, is it? Like
that's
the way I like it or something like that.
I don't know it's not that, but it could be a disco song. I could look it up. But Fame is kind of funny. But I really love, there's a few seconds of the Feelies, probably my favorite Feelies song, Slipping Into Something, which is off of not the Blue album, the
first album,
first album, but the one that came out around Nerve Time, The Good Earth, I think it's called.
Okay.
And it's just an amazing song. It's a song I played in the car 50 million times. It was when I was trying to write that book on listening to music in a car. That was probably going to be one of the centerpiece songs. So it's used for a few seconds. I think after they finally rid themselves of Ray, I don't want to get the act. Really, his characters. What's the? I'm trying to think what the character. I wrote it down in case I had to call it up. The character's name Ray too. Okay.
Oh, okay.
Character and actor. So they've left him at the restaurant, and they're kind of on the run from him. And beautiful photography. They're driving along. It's the way you should use that song. It's a little bit sinister. It's more beautiful than sinister, but it's got a little bit of that. That's a great use of music in the film. And then there are some other things that I didn't quite remember. Oh, I was going to say Melvin Howard, when I looked up the credits, she's about Doug Sam's She's About a Mover is in that. I don't remember when. And even Crazy Horses Downtown, which I think is the same downtown as Tonight's the Night.
Oh, okay.
That's a Melvin.
Is
Howard. But there's other stuff and something wild, but those are the highlights for me. You know who did the soundtrack, who was in charge of the music for Something Wild? I noticed in the credits. I'm wondering if this led to an introduction. It's Laurie Anderson and John Cale.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Oh. So when did Lou Reed and Laurie Anderson get married?
I don't think that was till the 90s or something.
So I'm wondering if,
maybe late 90s even. So I think
it doesn't necessarily. They lived in New York, and I'm sure they attended stuff all the time, so I don't think she necessarily got introduced by John Cale, but it did strike me that those two were musical directors of the film.
Yeah.
So, it's got Cale compared the film, I think we talked about at some point, to
John Cale or Pauline Cale? Which Cale are you talking about?
That's true. I think Pauline Cale said the film was like, or maybe Marcus wrote this, it was like, you go into a restaurant or bar or something, and the jukebox is playing the exact same song you were singing or song you've been thinking, something like that. That was either Cale,
I don't remember
Pauline, or Marcus that said that. And I wrote down some other things I think make it such a good film. Hold on. So Ray Liotta is just fantastic in it. He is scary. Like, he's really scary.
Oh yeah.
And I meant to check if that was his first film. I highly doubt it. He probably had small world character roles before that. But Daniels is great and Griffiths is great, but he I think, gives a memorable performance in that. There's lots of great cameos in the film besides Charles Napier. There's John Sayles. He plays the cop that pulls him over at one point. And then
Oh,
it's
really?
like, yeah. He has these back to back. He has John Sayles in the very next scene as John Waters as a car salesman. They want to ditch the car and they want to get a new one, and he's the car salesman. It is an attempt. I was making I think you can draw a parallel between Jeff Daniels' character Charlie in the film itself. Melanie Griffith kind of makes fun of him for being a sort of meek and guarded kind of rebel. And you could almost say this to a sense about Something Wild. As much as I like it, it's an attempt to break out of, American films kind of in the doldrums in the mid 80s. There was Stranger in Paradise, there was David Lynch, there was other things scattered, but, it was a lot of out of Africa and things like that. These prestige, Hollywood had gone back to the prestige film. So it's an attempt to break out of that, and it's really good, but it is a sort of kind of mild, polite version of trying to break out of that. I was thinking, I always compare Something Wild and Blue Velvet. Something Wild isn't as audacious as Blue Velvet, but I think it could even be a better film. It's really a good film. It's a film of small moments. I think Melvin Howard is very much sort of in the mold of Renoir. Something Wild is too, but Something Wild I think has a bit of Godard in it. In the Melanie Griffith character, her being the femme fatale. She is sort of like a Godard femme fatale, Anna Karina, or Jean Seberg in Breathless. She's got that quality about her. So I'd say that Something Wild is kind of a lot of Renoir, but some good Godard too.
Okay.
Watching it this time, I'll ask you if you remember this, because this was just other times I've seen this film. It's been there and I've thought about it, but it just seems so overwhelmingly front and center this time. And it demands you to try to figure out, it demands of you that you try to figure out, what is he doing? What is he saying? The way that African Americans are used in the film. They're like a Greek chorus, all this stuff is happening to these white characters, and every other character, almost, not every single one, but like 90% of the other characters, people that work at cash registers, cops, people that work in the hospital, they're all Black. They're all African American. And he got taken to task. He's been taken to task for that, saying it's sort of patronizing. And just wondering, it's really interesting. I don't know what he's trying to do, what he's trying to say. He's trying to say something.
I guess at the time I actually kind of drew a parallel between it and like really in David Byrne or Talking Heads, right? Like it's just that kind of that New York moment in the early 80s to the mid 80s where it really was that. Now you're saying he uses them obviously in a different way, and he doesn't have any leading characters that are African American. So maybe that's more the issue that you're raising. But it seemed like a very 80s New York centric kind of mindset movie to me. Like it made sense that it's sort of, there's David Byrne and then there's the Sister Carol thing at the end. Like it really, and he obviously went on to do the Talking Heads concert film. I think he was just sort of really attracted to that sort of mixing of the cultures back then.
Sister Carol has an even bigger role in Married to the Mob. I'm not attacking him for it. I think that.
No, I know you're not. You're just mentioning
that would be the issue, that there are no featured African Americans in, important key roles. But I think it is his attempt to maybe even call attention to Hollywood, not using Black actors in films, and in an odd sort of way, putting them in all these secondary roles. I know that's not ideal, but I think his intentions were like good and honorable and doing what you are saying.
I think he was just trying to tap into that milieu of the early 80s in New York or something. That the movie felt like that very much to me, even the second time I saw it. I mean, I know it's a little later than that, what I'm thinking, but
yeah,
I don't know.
It's just interesting. You can't not think about it. I'll put it that way.
Did Stop Making Sense come before? I think it's those two movies might have came out the same year.
Right? I'm thinking Stop Making Sense follows this immediately.
I think 1986 I thought it was 86 as well, but I could be wrong.
And True Stories was 86 too. They all came out on the same
around the same time. Yeah.
Marcus hates True Stories, if I'm not mistaken. I keep meaning to rewatch that.
Kale likes
Um,
that one, I think. I know
yeah,
she loves Stop Making Sense, but
yeah, I know. And I should even, my feelings about the Talking Heads aside, many people think that's the greatest concert film
I
ever
watched
made.
that
So,
again recently.
yeah,
I won't talk about it now. I mean, I loved it when it came out, but
yeah. So, and there's something about that film when I was watching this time. It's very pleasurable. It's got a nice ending, um, nice beginning. Oh, that's another thing. Even when she's reading a book where is it? When she's stuck in a restaurant with Ray, who she hates. She's reading a book on Winnie Mandela, I noticed.
oh,
Uh,
really?
yeah. So I think Melvin and Howard, if I had to choose between one of them, putting music aside, I think Melvin Howard is a more complete film, but Something Wild is pretty great, I think. Yeah.
Okay.
And, I'm glad I put Wild Thing in the book because even though it's a short, and it's funny, it's about the same length as The Fortunate Son clip and um, that stretch, that little bit of film. It's about the same length, 50 seconds or so, a minute. Yeah, I think it makes a
Feels more complete.
deeper impression. Yeah.
Hmm.
Something about that car pulling away as the music for Wild Thing comes back. It's great.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.